Happy Holy Day, Moors, and welcome to House of Reawakening Minds. House of Reawakening Minds exists to provide for exploration and practice of spirituality in an enlightened community dedicated to honoring the merit of sacred pathways to the universal creator. We are a holistic center for spiritual grounding, free thought, self-discovery, and Moorish science, an awakening experience for all ages. Tonight, we are pleased to present our National Grand Sheik, Taj Tarik Bey, as he presents Lex Gemini Facit Injuriam, The Law Does Injury to No One, MST of A degrees. Let's receive him.
Greetings, everyone. Islam salam. Assalamu alaikum. We're talking tonight to help a lot of people in fundamental jurisprudence by going back to the origins or disciplines upon which you hear or the phrase is constructed of enforcement of the Constitution. You hear people say or use the phrase enforcing the Constitution, or like as many of you who have been in your modern or contemporary jurisprudence study commonly hear the phrase made by our illustrious prophet Noble Duality when he said, if you don't believe that the program for the redemption of my people and citizens is correct, go to those who know law. You also hear another phrase made by our illustrious prophet Noble Duality, help me in my great missionary work to bring my people back into the constitutional fold of government. And you'll also hear commonly said amongst people who study ancient Asiatic African culture, traditions, and history, the rule, man, know thyself. And also the common statement of and philosophical inspiring statement, go back to that state of mind of your ancient mothers and fathers, or turn your hearts back to your ancient mothers and fathers, lest I come and smite the earth with a curse. And so when we look at the fundamentals of organized government at Midgard Earth, or the operations of government on the planet Midgard Earth, we go back to the ancient principles of Sabi. People will say Sabi or Saba or Sabian or the ancient Gnostics, etc. And Sabi or Sabians relates to the men who have hair like lamb's wool, or those who wear the wool. And that's what Sufi also means that. So when you look at those principles, they go back to the ancient world of the ancient Canaanites, Moabites, founders of civilization, and those principles by which government is was constructed. And those principles live even up to this day. However, knowing the fact that many people in high places of powers have corrupted those principles and have, by deliberate design, failed to, by design, transfer those principles of origin to the people, is one of the reasons why we're dealing with this subject tonight. And this is redundant because, as we've talked many times, truth, it doesn't come in versions, it's just what it is. And as I heard Dr. Naila often say to people in different conversations, the principles are ancient. And all we have to do is really look at the true philosophical meanings of the old books like the Quran, the Bible, and other books, going back to the root of them and getting a better comprehension and understanding of those books, as opposed to rejecting them out and out when we find out that those who have been governing our lives in the political and religious world have not only been deceiving the people and abusing the people, but actually have misrepresented the truth or misrepresented the books. And in the process has had many people reject the books rather than put them in their proper context for better comprehension and understanding and application. and therefore Lex Gemini Facit Injuriam. And that is Moorish Latin, which means the law does injury to no one. So take some notes, and then we'll get into, conversation. And these are not new conversations with you. This is just clarifications, because in the process of, our walk on this planet, so many people are coming into what you would call, what is commonly related to in these days as consciousness or enlightenment or seeing, etc., or introspection or insight and introspection, and learning, some willingly and some less willingly, to have respect for insight and that introspection, which has not been a common practice at Midgard for many generations. Thus, again, the law does injury to no one. So don't condemn the law when you don't know the law. But also, one of our problems has been in our relationships, particularly with members of the Roman Curia, who have been ruling Midgard planet for many centuries now. And the people are waking up to the fact that not only have they misgoverned humanity and the operations of government on the planet, but have in fact contaminated those principles, distorted those principles, etc. And so I will take some excerpts from an old lesson book of the Moore's Order of the Round Table, the Superliminal, and go into Lex Gemini Facit Injuriam. And some of those principles I had presented in the book MST of A Degrees years ago, which is also has some excerpts from the Superliminal. Lex Gemini Facit Injuriam, which means the law does injury to no one. So we're going to go into some of the reasoning why, and also why we've also always presented to the people to study jurisprudence, which is the science that treats of positive law, and that law and history goes together. And so we're going to give a little bit of information as to why you should, with a reasonable mind, look at that from that perspective. Now, when we look at and consider the word lex, that's L-E-X, which means law. So lex means law. We recognize and cognate its etymological meaning being as follows. Lex is of Moorish Latin origin, of customs and traditions, and is related directly to the civilization-oriented discipline noted as jurisprudence. That's Jurisprudence, jurisprudence. Jurisprudence is the science of law, quote unquote, the science of law, and the philosophy of law, quote unquote. So jurisprudence is the science and the philosophy of law. And thus lex, which means law, refers to the formal science and analytical study of the nature of law, ancient and modern. So keep that in mind. As an example of lex origins, we can consider natural law or nature's law. Now, natural law is referenced also as related to those ancient philosophical customs and traditions coming down from the archaic Sabian or Sabi Gnostics. These lex or law principles composing jurisprudence philosophies has origins coming down from the ancient natural peoples, Sabi. So Saba is capital S-A-B-A or S-A-B-I. Sabah is collectively the customs, the traditions, and the people of the ancient world, which you will commonly be told of as Hikupta or Egypt, which is the collective of the Asiatic African world. Collective, not just the area geographically referred to as Egypt today on your general Mappamundi constructs. It is the conglomeration of the ancient people of the hair of wool, or hair like lamb's wool, who are the founders of civilization of the ancient Canaanite, Moabite nation, etc. That is the founder, and who are the founders of civilization and the philosophies of jurisprudence that come down to us today. Now, so these lex law principles composing jurisprudence philosophies has origin coming down from the ancient natural peoples, Saba Sabi. Now, the men whose hair is like that of wool, the Gnostics, those who bear the knowledge, the one known in history as Sabian or Sabian. Now, natural law is designated in Moorish Latin as jus natural. That's jus natural. So J-U-S, natural. Nature's law and nature's God is a traditional phrase derived from and is related to natural law. Now, therefore, Lex Gemini Facit Injuriam means, or has the meaning of, law does injury to no one. Now, nature's law relates to the divine workings of nature and the disciplined studies associated thereto. Therefore, the rules of nature do not conflict with the nature of humanity, because humans, hominidae, are a part of nature. Lex and jurisprudence, being the science that treats of quote unquote positive law, is presented as jurisprudence. Jurisprudence, in the proper sense of its etymology, is the science of law, and as such is a specified science supporting civilization and ascertains the principles on which rules of law and justice-oriented processes are based. Such established rules and customs are deemed for proper usages and due process principles of law and of right. And this is known via Moorish Latin as jus et de jure. So juris et de jure, or irrefutable presumption, quote unquote, and the preservation of this principle, or juris et de jure principle, is adopted in modern jurisprudence and is known as stare decisis. Now, most of you who study jurisprudence know that stare decisis is essentially those established principles of law which are irrefutable and in relationship to justice of the peace principles or construction of law or any judicial structure cannot be presumed to be other than that which is right and are irrefutable and cannot be rebutted. And there, again, we establish that Lex Gemini Facit Injuriam, the law does injury to no one. And this lesson, or the lesson, follows that law and history has a binding relationship. And thus, law, lex, and history go together and are bound together as a studied discipline. Corruption of either of these disciplines constitutes crimes against humanity. And if one would seek justice, quote unquote, in matters of civilization at Midgard Earth, go to those who know law. Now, in the true sense of origin of the phrase enforcement, quote unquote, of the Constitution, we look at and consider the archaic nature's law, lex principles of our ancient mothers and fathers, and the keeping of and preservation of those lex principles as valid and de jure guidance for human government order or structure makeup for government. And government therefore is structured on these ancient divine principles and are put in place in a structured manner or written constructed format or oral traditions and customs for the preservations of divine rights that exist by divine nature with humanity, and in their nature are not what you call an ens legis construct, but are actually based on the principles of the studies of nature and then put into written form to formulate the makeup or the construct of government principles. Therefore, again, when we look at what would be called de jure or legitimate government, we will always look at the principles of Lex in order to see or to recognize whether or not those who are operating such government are in harmony with nature's God and nature's law, i.e., therefore Lex injures or the law injures no one. And this is why when you study ancient African Asiatic culture, you will see the cosmological origins or natures or phrases that always have to do with ephemerides construct of the nature of the heavens or star structure. Just like you'll look at metrology being used for the construction or the layout of cities, of pathways on the earth, of the ley lines on the earth, or where our ancient mothers and fathers built mounds, why they did, at what are also known as nova points or points of high energy. Also, where ancient temples were built, why they were built at certain places according to metrology or the laws of nature. And so you'll look at the abstract the nature of why certain concrete things were done with what you will refer to as the spiritual or the unseen or the breath aspect of construct. And so when you're looking at African Asiatic culture and the principles of jurisprudence, always look for the feminine, masculine principles that are rooted in everything, in the language, in the names of lands, etc. One example that you may look at before our Moorish mothers and fathers were defeated, when you're looking at Al-Andalus, which after the defeat of our mothers and fathers, the Moors who ruled after our defeat, Al-Andalusia was named Spain. And so when you look at Spain, you look at Andalus and Al-Andalusia. So you have a masculine and a feminine name. And a lot of times when you're looking at history and jurisprudence, it is important for you to remember the duality of the nature of both the linguistic forms and the names of lands, etc., and the nature of things in harmony with nature, so as to reduce the confusion when you're doing research or analytical studies on the culture. And very often, because after the hybrid Romans took over, and you look at this area after or during the area of what is known as the Napoleonic Wars, when the hybrid Europeans start taking over the original Aboriginal Phoenicians operations or homeland that you call Iberia or the Iberian Peninsula, which is now known as Europe. Why and how they corrupted the culture and constructively reduced or removed the feminine aspects of both law, the construct of government, how government is properly run in harmony with nature, the real meaning as to why the land in vexillum, or flags or standards, why they're not spoken of in their feminine aspect, etc., which is the origin or the construct of the womb or the ankh system, and why that means government, and why that harmonizes with government or the constitution or the makeup, or even when you're dealing with the silica salts, etc., that construct the body, and how and why. And this would be the system or the ankh, which is a symbol of the womb, and this would be the uterus, the left and the right fallopian tubes, and the birth canal, and this would be your first holy cross. And keep in mind that holy means the sun. All right, so Halig is Samskrita, which means the sun. And so because the offspring of the womb, etc., or the mother, and she produces herself, which is the feminine egg, and then she converts the feminine egg within the womb and gives birth to sons. And this is where, from this principle, the metaphor is mother and son, or ma son study, or masonry, which is the cosmo operation of this in government, cosmology, and thus metrology, and thus how buildings are constructed on the earth in line with the layout of the stars, i.e., metrology. Thus, the constitution of city constructs and nation constructs on earth in harmony with nature is designed to harm no one. Therefore, Lex Gemini Injuriam. The law injures no one. It's in harmony with nature. So that we can aid ourselves in getting back to the principles of our ancient mothers and fathers, because we have a lot of things to fix at Midgard. Why I just took this little excerpt from the supraliminal and actually did some bullet points on that to present what we're talking about tonight. And this is also because a lot of the demonology or dark side magic that has been adopted from ancient Babylonia, i.e., the dark side of things, has been ruling Midgard for so many centuries. It has caused so much havoc on the planet Earth, and the people are looking for light, or looking for remedy, or looking to construct order of government, or go back to the principles in order to fix things. And they're running into a lot of opposition. And as Dr. Naila was mentioning earlier, truth is under attack all across this planet, and people need to know why, etc. And so, but they also need to have a knowledge of origin of things, so they themselves can take responsibility and get into the order of operations, or the order of the day, to the true nativity of the people of Earth, both the nativity of the body and the nativity of the Constitution, principles of law, lex, in the nature of nature, so that they're not confused with the ens legis operations of quote unquote color of law, and have a foundation to look at, so that they can separate the wheat from the chaff, or the real from the fake, or the prima facie from the de jure, the de facto from the de jure. And that's again why we took this little excerpt from the MST of A degrees to share with you. And this is derived, that little section is derived from the supraliminal, that's lesson book number 12, which you haven't seen. To share with you tonight, because we're in this process all across the planet, and you'll see more and more people becoming what they would generally use as awake or reawakening. And it's actually a workings of nature, a divine workings of nature that's really taking place on the planet, so that we can catch up with what's going on. And those who are still a little sleepy, a lot of work that's taking place across the planet with all of humanity of trying to help in the great missionary work of uplifting fallen humanity, that you might have some sense of rational guidelines by which you can throw off the BS and start getting some work done. The other thing that I was talking to Dr. Naila, or most of you all know Dr. Naila is Dr. G. And a lot of you through the weeks and through this last couple of years have been dealing with or following her. A lot of times when she's traveling, she'll have casual conversations with you and share a lot of her insight. Most of you who know her know that she's a poetess. And when you read some of her poetry, you can kind of sense that she's a really a deep thinker, but she's like one of those kind of deep thinkers that thinks naturally deep. It's not like, like some people, they seek to analyze things or look at things deeply and they work at it. Well, she doesn't work at it. She just does it naturally. And many of you who've had the opportunity to ride with Dr. G, and when you're looking at the official office hours of Dr. G, and you pick through some of the philosophical statements that she makes, you'll really begin to recognize actually some of those ancient Sabi principles, etc. That's actually been a part of her life. And as she's grown in her cognizance, you will see that she's going deeper into the philosophies with the comprehension of their true metaphorical meanings, etc. And one of the things that you recognize taking place on the planet, almost all of us are going through that process of reawakening. And so again, we share that with you. And as I was talking to her earlier, because a lot of times when you present some of these fundamental, because these are really fundamental principles, any scholars who do any research in any of the disciplines of civilization on Earth find this stuff. This is not complex stuff. This is easily findable. I mean, this is findable. This is not deep research. These are basic principles that any scholar finds anyway. And people with PhDs and adeptus degrees in all societies, because all of your philosophical societies on the planet and your governmental societies have what are known as, quote unquote, adept chambers or adept orders, etc. And adept simply means those who are experts in the philosophies, etc. And this is common all over the world. So don't look at this as, this adept chamber only belongs to this organization or that organization. It belongs to all the philosophical organizations at Midgard. Whether they're using it positively or negatively, they know the rules. So let's get over that. For those who always make excuses about the people with all these grand titles and all these lettered titles who when pressured with the revelations of truth, pretend that they don't know these things or that they never heard of them. Or, whoa, I didn't know that we were messing over you. Yes, they did. Yes, they did. The problem that you have today is that the truth is becoming known to the common people as the metaphorical or the anthropological Jesus or Yeshua presented, where he took the truth to the common people after he went to the Sadducees and etc., the Pharisees, etc., who were corrupting everything. And that's really what's ruling today. Though those would be known today as the members, the Roman Curia members, and particularly those of the crown, quote unquote, which are known also as the Circle Church and Chancery, which is also known as British Accredited Registry, which are also known as your lawyers and your attorneys, which are also rejected in the constitutional makeup of the order of modern government, and why they don't teach what you would call the supremacy clause in the adopted constitution for contemporary operations of government, etc. Whereas they cannot hold lawful office in a constitutional government, which is also why you're having the problems that you're having today with the corruptions and the wars against the people under the operations of people who you thought were your government, thought was your government, who are really your enemies, who've been ruling over you. And a lot of the corruption and the miseries that humanity is suffering today has operative origin with those persons, etc. And so again, we share with you a little bit of that. Now, And as I was saying earlier, I was talking to Dr. G and Brother Wayne earlier about a lesson, and this is one of the exposés of the conquest intent at North America from colonial U.S. democracy. And this is actually, and many of you scholars and teachers and principals of schools, etc., know this, but they don't usually show this to the people, particularly since most of them operate under the Rockefeller institutions, etc., whose missionary work has been to overthrow the fundamental principles of jurisprudence in relationship to constitutional enforcement and its ancient origin of Sabi or Saba, and implying that it is from the devil or that it injures humanity when actually it's the foundation of civilization, etc. And so this is actually sharing with you some of the questions of a completed 8th grade. Understand, we're not talking about high school. We're not talking about college. We're not talking about university. We're talking about 8th grade. And this is from the 1800s. And we'll share a little bit of that with you. Dr. Nayola, you was asking me a question earlier.
No, I just had a thought with regard when you just said an interjection. When you mentioned whose missionary work is XYZ. Historically or traditionally, we have been given the false, I guess,
or misdirected.
We've been misdirected to think that anything that was a missionary was a doer of good.
Yes.
But even though the prophet said, help me in my missionary work.
My great missionary
work. But there are missionaries of doom and death and all of those other things, just as there are so allegedly, people who are going out. As a matter of fact, most of who we thought down through the ages were missionaries of help were actually going into traffic.
They was missionaries of demonology.
There you go.
And this does not exclude others, so let's not get that. But most specifically, the great political platform for the missionary work of din and doom is known as the Democratic Party of the Kaiklos, or the KKK, etc., that's operating in the Western Hemisphere, although what their counterpart, which is really not their counterpart in the modern world, known as the Republican Party, together are two sides of the same coin of operatives who have been spearheading, from an enforcement perspective, the military forces of Rome to conquer the world under unum sanctum and the doctrine of discovery, while pretending to be a legitimate government, particularly since 1861, which most of you already know. And again, as we were talking earlier, to demonstrate to you how many people who have been subjected to the operations of John D. Rockefeller and Frederick T. Gates in their psychic attack construct known as the General Education Board to maintain the operations of the dark, etc., under the guise of good, which is why most of you who already know, particularly those who care about the children, because a lot of people say that, but, well, you can take that with a grain of salt, who send their children to the operatives of Rome under the guise of education, will send them to the operative Roman Curia, Circle Church and Chancery, members of the Rockefeller Foundation, known as the General Education Board, established in 1902, for the purpose of dumbing down humanity under the guise of uplifting humanities. Keep that in mind. However, just to give you support or a comparative example for study to just demonstrate how even your so-called college grads, many of them would fail this test which was given to 8th graders in 1800s, etc., as an example, because people always, many, not always, but many people, when presented with these fundamental principles, will say, oh man, that's that Moorish stuff, as opposed to recognizing that this is just simply a research of facts of the human walk on the planet of the earth and is available to anyone. Here we go, 8th grade test questions. Now, the following we're going to share with you just to give you some examples and food for thought. And for many of you who are teachers and instructors and motivational instructors, this would give you something to work with to encourage people to take responsibility of themselves and of their seed or offspring, and take them out of the hands of Rome, who they've had faith in for quite some time, to their own injury. And this will be an example. This is transcript, word for word, of an 8th grade school test final exam. And this, for those of you who are researchers, many of you who are teachers and instructors know of this, but for those who don't, we're sharing it with you today. And this is from Salina, Kansas in 1895. And these are questions, and the questions would be presented in grammar with time presented as 1 hour, arithmetic with time presented as 1.25 hour, of United States history, 45 minutes, orthography, 1 hour, geography, 1 hour, and health, 45 minutes, as an example. Keep in mind, this is 8th grade. So I'm going to present to you the questions that are in this test for 8th graders in 1895 to show you the damage that has been done to the people of the land since 1902 with the Rockefeller and Gates Foundation operations under the guise of uplifting people, i.e., with their establishment of the mind control system and corruption of law via the General Education Board. Questions, 8th grade final exam, Salina, Kansas, 1895. Grammar, number 1. Give 9 rules for the use of capital letters. Number 2. Name the parts of speech and define those that have no modifications. Number 3. Define verse, stanza, and paragraph. Number 4. What are the principal parts of a verb? Give principal parts of do, lie, lay, and run. Number 5. Define case. Illustrate each case. Number 6. What is punctuation? Give rules for principal marks of punctuation. Number 7 to 10. Write a composition of about 150 words and show therein that you understand the principal use of the rules of grammar. That is in grammar. Then arithmetic. Time 1.25 hours. 1. Name and define the fundamental rules of arithmetic. 2. A wagon box is 2 foot deep, 10 foot long, 3 foot wide. How many bushels of wheat will it hold? Number 3. If a load of wheat weighs 3,942 pounds, what is its worth at 50 cents per bushel, deducting 1,050 pounds for tare? That's T-A-R-E, tare. Number 4. District number 3 has a valuation of $35,000. What is the necessary levy to carry on a school 7 months at $50 per month and have 104 for its incidentals. Number 5, find cost of 6,720 pounds of coal at $6 per ton. Number 6, find the interest of $512.60 for 8 months and 18 days at 7%. 7, what is the cost of 40 boards 12 inches wide and 16 foot long at $20, 20 cents per inch? 8, find bank discount of $300 for 90 days with no grace at 10%. Number 9, what is the cost of a square farm at $15 per acre, the distance around which is 640 rods? Number 10, write a bank check, a promissory note, and a receipt. That comes under arithmetic. Under the United States history, which is 45 minutes. 1, give the epochs into which United States history is divided. 2, give an account of the discovery of America by Columbus. 3, relate the causes and results of the Revolutionary War. 4, show the territorial growth of the United States. 5, tell what you can of the history of Kansas. 6, describe 3 of the most prominent battles of the rebellion. 7, who were the following: Morse, Whitney, Fulton, Bell, Lincoln, Penn, and Howe. Number 8, name events connected with the following dates: 1607, 1620, 1800, 1849, and 1865. That's history time. This is all 8th grade stuff. Keep that in mind. Orthography. Time, 1 hour. Number 1, what is meant by the following: alphabet, phonetic orthography, etymology, symbolism. 2, what are elementary sounds? How classified? 3, what are the following? And give examples of each: trigraph, subvocals, diphthong, cognate letters, linguals. 4, give 4 substitutes for carrot: U in parentheses. 5, give 2 rules for spelling words with finale. Name 2 exceptions under each rule. 6, give 2 usages of silent letters in spelling. Illustrate each. 7, define the following prefixes and use in connection with a word: by, dis, miss, pre, semi, post, non, inter, mono, and super. 8, mark diagraphically and divide into syllables the following and name the sign that indicates the sound: card, ball, mercy, sir, odd, sell, rise, blood, fair, last. 9, use the following correctly in sentences: cite, C-I-T-E, cite, S-I-T-E, cite, S-I-G-H-T, feign, F-A-N-E, feign, F-A-I-N, feign, F-E-I-G-N, vain, V-A-N-E, vain, V-A-I-N, vain, V-E-I-N, raise, R-A-Z-E, raise, R-A-I-S-E, and rays, R-A-Y-S. Number 10, write 10 words frequently mispronounced and indicate pronunciation by use of diacritical marks and by symbolication. Symbolication, pardon me. Now that deals with orthology. Geography. Time, 1 hour. 1. What is climate? Upon what does climate depend? 2. How do you account for the extremes of climate in Kansas? 3. Of what are rivers? Of what use is the ocean? 4. Describe the mountains of NA. 5. Name and describe the following: Monrovia, Odessa, Denver, Manitoba, Hecla, Yukon, St. Helena, Juan Fernandez, Aspinwall, and Orinoco. Number 6, name and locate the principal trade centers in the United States. 7, name all the republics of Europe and give the capital of each. 8, why is the Atlantic coast colder than the Pacific in the same latitude? 9, describe the process by which the water of the ocean returns to the sources of rivers. 10, describe the movements of the earth and give inclination of the earth. That completes geography. Health, time, 45 minutes. 1, where are the saliva, gastric juice, and bile secreted? What is the use of each in digestion? 2, how does nutrition reach the circulation? 3, what is the function of the liver? What is the function of the kidneys? Number 4, how would you stop the flow of blood from an artery in the case of laceration? Number 5, give some general directions that you think would be beneficial to preserve the human body in a state of health. Now that completes the health. Now this is a statement in relationship to this 8th grade test. Now imagine a college student who went to public school at the end of the 20th century trying to pass this 8th grade test. An 8th grade level of education is at least a minimal standard grade level so that the masses can comprehend fundamental reading, writing, and communication in general. And is this 8th grade test the level that set that standard? If so, why does the system reflect an apparent dumb down? Can North American students and professors alike get back up to the great 8th grade level of education dispensed in 1895? I just wanted to share that with you because Dr. Naila and myself, we were talking about this earlier because people are beating her up with a whole bunch of calls.
And while you were reading that, I've had up on the screen the online schooling for MoorishChildren.com link, because a lot of parents have been asking, is there a school where Moorish parents where I can have, get my children educated? This school has been going on for 6 years now.
Yes.
And I know you frequently are a guest.
Yes.
On their online school and
yes, with Sheik Taj Tarik.
And it goes from what age to what? From what grades to what, rather?
They deal with, soon as they start talking, they actually deal with them.
All
be honest with you.
12th.
Yes.
12th grade.
Yes.
So I had that running while you were talking because it's interesting. I mean, 90% of what you said, I couldn't answer the questions right. Because, and I asked you earlier today, when did the John D. Rockefeller and Frederick T. Gates
established
their, which was after this. This was
actually. Now this is 1895.
In 1895, an
1895
student knew or was expected
this
to
was
know.
basic. All of this was basic to 8th grade level. And there's an assumption with many of the people, like when we're presenting some of these facts over the years with people, and you'll see people often would make the statement, yeah, man, but it's the college stuff. And the real deal, that's 8th grade stuff. And, just like we were talking earlier, because I know you had a couple of calls, which you can comment, because we're sharing with the people this experience of awakening,
right,
and reawakening too, and responsibility, truthfully, with some of the questions that were presented to you actually today. And it's not new in calls that were made to you. And just because of the conversation, I just simply went to the ordinary dictionary of words and brought up, more and black and more. It's a compound word, breaking it up. It's basic classification and the principle of classification of words, just to discuss how easy it is when people keep thinking that their Moorish pedigree or bloodline is a religion when actually it's their pedigree. And also to dispel any assumption that scholars don't know this or that other people don't know this, etc. So I went actually to dictionary of words, just basic words, and it actually gives you a lot of information in just 2 lines. And then we did an analysis on that, which is orthology, which is basic stuff that you learn in elementary school. Not today, but in the rule of basic etymology or basic grammar principles, a child would know in the 8th grade in 1800s. And people today assume that they're more educated because they're not aware of fundamentals which have been held back from them, in fact, etc. And so when you're talking about Lex or the law, they think that the law doesn't belong to them. They think that the law belongs to the members of the Bar Association of the British Accredited Registry in England that have a branch operating at North America unconstitutionally as a standard of operations for the execution of due process, when in fact they've been actually operating to the contrary. And actually their missionary work has been to overthrow the Republic and not really support the Republic, i.e. their major missionary work politically has been to overthrow and violate constitutional principles, not uphold them. And therefore, the members of the British Accredited Registry have been operating here, actually overthrowing the rights of the people and not really presenting or representing the rights of the people. And when that is said, a lot of times the people will get defensive and make ignorant statements that you're against them governing you, when actually, if the people would study even 8th grade level of education, they would recognize that these people are really enemies of the state of order and not actually supporters of constitutional principles, but to the contrary, have actually been overthrowing and subverting the rights of the people and actually been enemies of the law and not supporters of the law. But because they have been enemies of the law, the people think that the law is really hurting them, when actually these people have been operating a color of law, a color of authority, and a color of office, and getting people to actually reject the law and actually think that the law is separate from their history and chronology, when actually they're harmonic partnerships. It's another reason why we're sharing this lesson tonight. And that 8th grade test is a documented testimony of the dumbed down of the people. And sometimes you have to give people, you can tell the people the truth about some things and they won't accept it. So I just use this as an example to show them that truth. And then encourage them to take responsibility, because we all have our work to do in helping to uplift fallen humanity. And when you just as an example, you can understand statements made by people who have been helping or been working hard to redeem the people from mental servitude, mental slavery. Just as Noble Duality said, I came to redeem you from mental slavery, which you have now. When you understand history, chronology, and lex and jurisprudence, then you can understand why certain statements that he made were made. And you'll also understand why the Moorish Holy Temple of Science was founded as a civic organization to teach civilization principles.
So when you used to hear back in the 1800s or so, when somebody said he only had an 8th grade education, they actually had far more than
you're getting in college now.
Getting in college now.
Now, yes, and this is a demonstration of it. And see, so the example, should encourage people to take serious the reason why this. And what you all see here is only a small. It's a small example of what's over here, what's down there, what's downstairs, what's in boxes in the basement, and what you gave away.
Gotta learn.
And it's basic. And then you understand from the motivational point of view, from a negative political dark side democracy principle, why the hybrid Europeans instituted Index Librorum Prohibitorum and Index Librorum Expurgatorius, which is commonly known as the Great Christian Book Burnings. But don't blame that on Christianity, because these people aren't Christians. They've been hiding behind the word Christianity. But they're really Constantinians, operating the Niceno-Constantinopolitan Creed operations of the hybrid Romans that actually took over ancient Roma, etc., since the Napoleonic Wars, and have been corrupting Asiatic African history on the planet ever since.
There are so many comments here in the comments of those who have gone to college or whatever, and they're saying like, I feel stupid, or I didn't get this in college, or
of course
I wasted my time. And it's amazing how they deliberately decided, and it's in their whatever their mission statement is, that we're going to dumb them down.
Yes. As a matter of fact, and this is also now again, Dr. Naila, present again Grand Sheik's Daria's school just for a minute.
You put the banner up?
To help the people. Yes, please put that up.
Okay.
And for those of you who are seeking some remedy, here is a very, very, very erudite mother and empress who've been working for the nation for decades. And one of the primary people who was one of my teachers too over the years, Grand Sheikis Daria Bey. And she started a school years ago online to start bringing remedy to a lot of the injury that has been done to our children. Name her school, please.
Moorish School for Children. It's the online schooling for moorishchildren.com.
Mm-hmm. Now, in response to the injuries done to the Moors, or what you would commonly be told to hide it, they'll just say indigenous people. That's a way so they don't have to, because that's a designation. Keep in mind, that's not a pedigree name. That's a social political designation. So rather than say the Moors or the Americans, the true Americans, they'll just say the indigenous people or Injuns. So for them to attack the Injuns, true people of the lands, they set up the General Education Board by John D. Rockefeller and Frederick T. Gates in 1902. And for those of you who are studied, this is particularly after they murdered Winona at Ashokamoxon territory, which you know today as Philadelphia. And people come from around the world to visit, where they threw her off the rocks They call it Lover's Leap. And then they have a statue of her assassination symbolically with a hybrid European holding a sword underneath a flag like this at the base of one of our mounds, which is where they have the art museum at Philadelphia. And you'll see that when you look from the air, the architecture of that whole layout to the battleground, which is now City Hall, which is designed like a mosque, you'll see architecturally, it's just like this. Absolutely is. Bordered by the Delaware River and the Schuylkill River. Absolutely. And at the base of those steps that you see in the movie Rocky Balboa runs up the steps, you'll see a statue called Eakins Oval. Ovary, oval. Ovary, oval. And that statue indicates or is symbolic of the assassination of Winona. And after that murder, assassination of Winona, and they'll have Tammany's statue at the base of Market Street going into the boulevard, etc., with Aquila on his shoulders, etc., just before you enter. And that's her husband. So they'll even symbolize the destruction of the Lenape of this area, Lenape Moors. They'll say Lenape. It's the Lenape. You roll the R because you're dealing with Berber, or what you call Berber linguistic group of Africa. There you go, Northwestern Mexim. Anyway, so let's read the philosophy of the founders of that General Education Board designed for the dumbed down to show you why this 8th grade test is higher than the average college student operating at North America. Graduate or university. This is public information available to all readers, including all you parents that keep saying that you love your children and that, we got to make it better for the children. Well, stop it. You just really stop it because you need to read yourselves. So John D. Rockefeller and Frederick T. Gates, and many of you are familiar with that foundation called Gates, who are also to this day trying to poison your children, sticking things in their arms in the name of helping them. Remember the Tuskegee experiments? Then look at the experiments that they're doing to you now and your children. Philosophy. The founders of the General Education Board, John D. Rockefeller and Frederick T. Gates, 1902. In our dreams, this is quote unquote, this is their philosophy, this is documented all over the world in all education systems, but they won't read it. In our dreams, we have limitless resources, and the people yield themselves with perfect docility to our molding hands. The present education conventions fade from their minds. And unhampered by tradition, we work our own goodwill upon a grateful and responsive rural folk. We shall not try to make these people or any of their children into philosophers or men of learning or men of science. We have not to raise up from among them authors, editors, poets, or men of letters. We shall not search for embryo great artists, painters, musicians, nor lawyers, doctors, preachers, politicians, statesmen, of whom we have an ample supply. The task we set before ourselves is a very simple as well as a very beautiful one. To train these people as we find them to a perfectly ideal life just where they are. So we will organize our children and teach them to do in a perfect way the things their fathers and mothers are doing in an imperfect way. in the homes, in the shops, and on the farm. General Education Board, Occasional Papers #1. General Education Board, New York, 1913, page 6. There you go. Common knowledge. They told you what they were going to do. So now you understand why many of you, after I read some of these basic questions that are given to eighth graders in 1895, 1896 area. This is 1895 of the eighth grade. While most of the people are listening to this broadcast here, the House of Reawakening Minds, and those of you who've been connected to so-called education systems are in debt for educations that don't even equal eighth grade. And that's a fact. Many of you are in debt for life under what they call student loans for miseducation and don't even know or haven't been made aware that you were actually being dumbed down and put into perpetual servitude with debt that most of you will never pay. Thus, the law does injury to no one. Know the law, know thyself, and go back to those principles of thy ancient mothers and fathers. That's the lesson. And we just gave this to give you a little bit of support and a little bit of encouragement to do so. And doing what we can to whatever humble degree we can here at the House of Reawakening Minds to aid you in that work while you aid us in helping to get this message across to the people of the land and the people of Midgard Earth in the great missionary work of helping to uplift fallen humanity.
You know, I remember when I was young and my parents invested, you know, the door-to-door salesman would come around with the World Book.
Yeah, Britannica.
We got one right up there that we found, like after, going through the Goodwill or wherever we went. But we had the whole set. I mean, it was important. You know, they would buy books. You know what I mean? And I'm talking
and it's
60 years or so ago.
And it's interesting. It's more information in those old Britannicas than the people get in your basic education today. But that's another reason why they made them unpopular and start getting rid of them, because it's also the part of expurgatorius, and people need to be aware of those things so that they can start taking responsibility and putting their effort into civic organizations to restore that which was lost. But thankfully, Sheik Taj Bey has established that online school to get past some of this corruption to help our children and those who are willing to participate in actually doing the work to help uplift fallen humanity and help our children. And I'm grateful to her. And she's very busy. And of course, she's been doing this for years. And so that's just for many of you who would ask, well, is there any place to go? And do they have any more schools? Sure, it's been there, but again, because mainstream news does more to attack the truth or to suppress anybody who's trying to get good work done. They will misrepresent, make satirical statements, do trolling videos, etc., to suppress knowledge because they've been actually living off the people's birthright and off the people's estate under a platform of false government and fraudulent government and color of law and actually attacking the law. And thus, when people get injury, people keep thinking that the law is injuring them when the law does injury to no one. It is actually the lawless who have been pretending to be men of law who are actually the enemies of that which is enlightenment and erudition and are actually angels of the dark pretending to be angels of the light. And you really need to know that. And the battle at Midgard planet, this time in this cycle, in this Aquarian cycle, is the exposure of all of those frauds that have been governing Midgard for these last few centuries. And again, the knowledge is not new. However, just like Septuaginta in the Bible and the Quran says, Allah will reject those who reject knowledge. The people are destroyed by the day for lack of knowledge. And knowledge goes back to the ancient Sabi or Saba, Sabians, who are the Gnostics, those who hold the knowledge. Then you understand the Gnostic philosophies that are behind what you call Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, which all have the same root from those men of the hair like lamb's wool who carry the knowledge, known as the Gnostics. Now, so when people are looking at the ancient African philosophies, most of the time they're looking at some kind of religious ritual only, not knowing that these are actually symbols or what you call ritual demonstrations and symbolic demonstrations of the workings of nature. And being that humanity is a part of nature, the law is in place for you to construct your life and to have a point of reference. Therefore, the law does injury to no one.
Here's a question here, and they asked it twice, so I don't want it to
slip
by again. Curtis Orr, can Taj please explain the Parents Patrie Act and how to undo its legal ramifications through private administrative process, please?
This is where the hybrid Europeans operating under the guise of uplifting fallen humanity and the philosophy of Roman order and the members of the Circle Church and Chancery, known as members of the Roman Curia. This would be members of all your secret societies in your modern world, claiming to be your parent. Now, so the administrative processes, they will have many, and usually they will deal with what is known as commercial codes that have been made uniform since around 1986 to 1966 to 1968, when they blackmailed and intimidated the operative government of Texas, which was the last Republic area in the process of the members of the Circle Church and Chancery overthrowing the Republic at North America, which is the missionary work of the Bar Association, etc., which is also why they don't teach the original Article Amendment 13, sometimes also known as the 1320, the original Article 13 with its 20 sections. Also why members of the bar, by law, were not to hold any office under the Republic order adopted from Muslim law of the Anansi Confederation of Moors at North America to do business under constitutional principles, which logically reaches back to all the treaties, etc. Now, so the administrative process, because they've been doing what you call human trafficking, the United States Corporation Company is actually a human trafficking platform pretended as legitimate government, particularly since 1861, with what is known as the Organic Act of Congress, 1861. So because they started, because their missionary work, operative administrative missionary work is human trafficking, and because humanity is designated as property, surety property, backing the U.S. corporation, private alien, private debt, etc., all things are done in what they call a commercial trade operation. Therefore, the Uniform Commercial Trade or Uniform Commercial Codes, which been operative since 1966 to 1968, and the different administrative operations that were constructed for reclaiming the estate, which in many cases have been actually still misrepresented, to be honest with you, is what those administrative commercial processes are. And for those who study uniform commercial codes, many people have used them to get back to what you would call administrative position holder in due course of their lost estate, which is what that makes reference to. And so the parens patriae is where the hybrid Europeans cut out the feminine principle, which we talked about earlier. And this is even why
Patre is the masculine.
Yeah,
right?
yes. This is why you see all the popes of Rome um, um, are all males, number one, and only in general, until recent years, to pacify the people, they had any Asiatic African blood in it at all, because actually we have been their target under Unum Sanctum operations and the Spanish Inquisition. That's the Inquisition against Al-Andalusia, which we stated earlier. And this is also why you see their gentrification practices that are common, in particularly at North America, with its promotion or exportation around the world, and also with the constant wars against Asia and Africa perpetrated by the hybrid Europeans who've been perpetrating themselves as Americans and going around the world doing things in our name. Again, the promised position from them in their operations, recognizing that the people are becoming conscious or reawakening to their true pedigree, have been the Uniform Commercial Codes as an operative format to counter their parens patriae position of operations of government, claiming to be your parent, etc., and therefore putting the people into a wardship status. This is again for those of you who have gotten the flash drive from Dr. Naila from over the years. Do a look at Reversioner as an article to kind of get the concept of getting past some of the offers made by Rome as the people wake up. Because as you all notice, for those who've been doing research, many of the people who have perfected the Uniform Commercial Code processes, as promised by the Roman Curia members, as soon as they perfect them and try to execute a holder in due course processes, you see that they don't honor it. And this is, again, why it's important for people to nationalize and simply not stand as surety, because you can't, not by right, they will not allow the process of people actually capturing the straw man, because the straw or the man of straw is the foundation of the operations of the dark side of the priesthood, who have been actually running government on the planet as at large, not just the democracy platform at North America with the corrupted counterpart called the Republican Party, members of the Whigmore parties, and particularly, and the interesting of the Kansas school test that we talked about. For those of you who are scholars, do a research on the Kansas-Nebraska Act.
I was going to ask you to talk about that.
Yeah. And so that's dealing with a lot of the area and the dynamics that are behind the split of the Whigmore Party that has later come. Keep in mind, the Whigmore Party is the hybrid Europeans practice in the UK and in the subdivisional colonial operations at the Maghreb or North America, a Mexum, pretending to be Moors. This is why when you're dealing with jurisprudence or the law, that they would wear the curly wigs, which they do even to this day and in the UK, imitating the Moors, because that's what it was all about. Now, so my position with this has been for Moors to go back to the principles of their mothers and fathers. For any position that's represented by the hybrid Romans for your redemption would always be a deception. And this is, again, for those of who have done research, to take a look at even a hybrid European daughter who mastered the UCCs and in the process, as promised, took control or got to the point of completing the deck of cards of the UCCs, commercial codes, to become a holder in due course of her quote unquote birth certificate. They tried to destroy her in hidden and closed hell, quote unquote, ecclesiastical court, but because the people are more awakened, which is why they weren't successful to how do you say, to neutralize her. However, they never honored her, and they put her through literal hell. That's my comment on the Uniform Commercial Codes, which is why about 15 or so years ago I did that lecture in Connecticut called The Danger of the UCCs. And it is not that it's not a promised position of holder in due course or executor of your estate. Because remember, the fundamentals of the political problem on the planet in these days, and particularly of North America and Aboriginal indigenous people, i.e. the Moors, has been the hybrid Europeans robbing Moorish estates and converting them under and to the jurisdiction of the United States Corporation Company under the guise of legitimate government, when actually it is a political platform of fraud by the demon operators of the Roman Curia under the Whiggamore Party disguised as the Democratic Party, etc. And so above all, I always promote the principle that when Rome makes you an offer or gives you an apple, it would be wise not to bite it. And that to go back to the principles of your ancient mothers and fathers and enforce the Constitution principle, because it goes beyond the Constitution and goes beyond those charters that present the rightful argument for the allodial rights of man, etc. Go back to those principles of your ancient mothers and fathers and enforce them. And when doing so, that the colorable instrumentalities of ens legis created by the hybrid Europeans and the members of the Whiggamore parties of the corrupt dark side Babylonian operations of the hybrid Europeans who've been operating at North America under the guise of legitimate government when they're actually de facto, etc., that in the process of our people, the people of the land nationalizing, they actually begin to kill or choke the bottomry instruments that were created under the guise of law by the hybrid Europeans, etc., and in fact would kill the bonds. And they're commonly known as U.S. Treasury bonds, which are the basis of the operations of the stock market, which is really bonds against the people. That's the bondage. It actually chokes it. Meanwhile, prepare yourself for self-government or the study of lex, etc., or law or jurisprudence, i.e., the science that treats of positive law, which is a disciplined section of ancient Saba or Sabi, sometimes called Sabi, culture, etc., of ancient Canaanite Moabites, etc., the founders of civilization, and redeem your lost estate, because it deals with all hereditaments, corporal and incorporeal. And in the process, what it does, it kills the bonds, because Romans will never honor right law, for they are operatively the opposite. Thus, the law does injury to no one. Dr. Niall.
Let's see if there are any more questions. I haven't heard of other comments.
That's just a reminder. Most of you already know this stuff. We're just redundantly from different angles telling you the same thing we've been telling you for 40 years, truthfully. But the truth doesn't change or pass away, so we keep going back to it. But because more and more people are reawakening, we're just giving them a way to look at what already is. It doesn't need to be, you don't need to recreate the wheel, you need to get on it. Because that's the truth. And on the other hand, when people assume that people who have been governing over your affairs aren't aware of these things, but we're showing you some of these things, including the philosophy page of the General Education Board of those who've been so-called educating you and your children that they are well aware of what they've been doing to the people. They're not ignorant of it. And also from a motivational perspective, political and social, why they always attack Moors who are wakening up to or reawakening to the truth of their nationality and their birthright. And it ain't religion, it's pedigree, traditions and customs, and your true history and archaic principles of government on planet Earth. That's the truth. And of course, by not knowing it, we've lost our estate. So now let's get back to claiming our lost estate. And this is just simply a part of it. And so we're sharing some of this stuff with you to help in the missionary work so that a lot of time is not wasted on things which are really designed as misdirections.
Here's a question. Will you all explain how to get your babies out of their jurisdiction before age 7, or will nationality itself be sufficient enough? Still got the school up here.
let's look at this from the position of the priesthood who have been operating government here and who have been operating the General Education Board. The principle in the Christian Black codes is this: the condition of the child is the condition of the mother. Therefore, to take the children out of the jurisdiction of Rome, the mother or the parent, and this is counter to parentis patre, a counter move, is to nationalize yourself and the children. So nationalization in African culture, coming down from the Berber, or what you call the Berber culture, would be: my people are destroyed by the day for lack of knowledge. Another would be: I hold my hand out all the day long to a hard-hearted and rebellious people who are not called by my name. When they repent from their sinful ways, I will hear from heaven and heal their land, L-A-N-D. Turn your hearts back to your ancient mothers and fathers, lest I come and smite the earth with a curse. That would be the closing of what is known as the Old Testament in the book of Malachi, etc. Another one would be: every man, every woman, and every child must confess their own and worship under their own vine and fig tree. In a political, civil sense, that would be given this fundamental political, social status designation, and it would be called nationalization. That word, nationalization, in a political, civil law sense of lex and jurisprudence, would be nationalization. That would be going back to the principles of your ancient mothers and fathers, preserving Saba, or keeping the Sabbath, holding those principles, customs, and traditions, which is also referred to as the common law that supersedes all legislation, or ens legis, and other legislated law supersedes, which is superior because it goes back to Sabi. That's the truth. And therefore, the law does injury to no one. Why? Because it supports civilization. Therefore, any philosopher or motivational speaker that really want to help the people, they will tell them to go back to those who know law, because you'd go back to those with the hair like lamb's wool, who set the law principles of civilization at Midgard Earth, which are preserved to this day. Problem has been, it's been preserved among others for selfish cause and held back from others, so that those would become the servants unlawful of wicked and selfish MAs, or master astrologers, who have and are members of the Roman Curia, who have actually been supporting the corruption of Rome and not the principles of the ancient Moabites. And therefore, they are referred to as the ruthless ones. And those who keep the law are those who keep the law of Ruth the Moabitess, i.e., grandmother of Yeshua, or what they call the metaphysical Jesus, i.e., justice, the one with hair like lamb's wool, who speaks with a voice of many waters in the book of Revelations. Those are metaphors to give you the ancient Berber culture, or Berber linguistic culture of Sabi. That's the truth. Keep it simple. And of course, this is researchable, and all philosophers know this stuff anyway. Most of these people just pretend they don't know because these basic fundamental truths destroys the BS of many institutions that have been raping the people and stealing the widow's pennies for centuries, pretending to love humanity when actually they've been enemies of humanity. And that's where you see the anthropomorphic Jesus down in the temple, disputing with the doctors of the law. They've been doctoring up the law. And this is why when you mention Lex or the law to people, they keep rejecting it, thinking it belongs to the hybrid, when actually it's the principles of your ancient mothers and fathers that they've been tricking you into rejecting so that they could rule over you while secretly keeping the law for themselves, and then having you pay them to represent the law in mockery rather than you presenting the law, which is yourself, which is Islam. I, self, law, am master, and not just some ritual creed. They won't tell. This is why people who know won't tell you that Islam is really a sect of original Coptic Christianity. They just called Islam because they were, or how do you say, separating themselves from the blood sacrifice practices of the dark side. That's all. And that's the truth. But when you hear us say Islam, we don't necessarily mean what a lot of people think that we're meaning. We're talking about the truth of divine law and not a cage to put people in to steal their personalities, but in fact to actually aid them in developing or in reattaching themselves to divine law that's harmonic with humanity at large, and not the secularism that is practiced in the name of religion and dogmatism that has actually done more to do injury to the planet and to the humans of the planet than actually uplifting them. That's why you'll see us use it in an acronym form. That's why it's done, for those who may not understand. And also for those who've been misrepresenting what we've been telling you. There you go.
I think it's interesting to, it would be interesting to discuss the fact of what you and I, over the last, I want to say several months now, not just few months, the fact that, the modern European is essentially doing what the prophet said they would be doing.
Yes.
Which is,
they're starting to tell the truth.
We've been getting information. I mean, and there's probably some people that a lot of people don't watch or listen to.
Exactly.
And most of our people don't, but we've been getting some intel that is absolutely almost irrefutable, and
it is
actually
irrefutable.
It's confirmational.
Yes.
It's confirmation.
Yes.
It's things that you've been saying and
for 4 years.
Years and years and years.
Yes. And now and as when years ago when we started coming down here on a regular basis since 2011 in that area, when I was telling you some of the oral statements of Duality, when he says, I'm going to make the European tell you the truth.
Right.
Now, and this is what you're making reference to. And what you see taking place actually on the planet, around the planet, you can see why he was known as Prophet Duality. Everything he has said a century ago really is manifesting right on time and in time. Now, the deal of it is, and as we talked about years ago, when I started trying, encouraging the people to set up a trust and to start taking control of a trust, even though we knew that a lot of people didn't have a background or proper study, which this 8th grade test will demonstrate. We knew metaphysically that if the people started rejecting Rome and rendering back to Caesar what is Caesar, Caesar means Roman ruler. That's what it means. It's not an individual man. that it would start killing the bond system. We also knew that many people would get frustrated because they've been trained, to this red pill, blue pill thing. Take a pill and it's over. Tell me this and I'll fix everything. And it doesn't work like that. It is really the sincere participation in the reclamation or reversion of a state that actually kills the bond, that actually is the basis that starts unraveling the de facto and fiat or blind faith operations of Rome on the planet today that has unfortunately put the world in economic, social, and political peril that the people are experiencing today. And again, as you notice too, Dr. Naila, as many of the hybrid European sons and daughters have been even making videos as of late in harmony with what Noble Duality said. They're telling more and more truths about the Republic, about the overthrow of the Republic, about the Organic Act of Congress of 1871, which we've been teaching for years, that many people, even among the Moors who knew this information, who are adepts, were actually attacking active Moors or Great Seal Moors for sharing this information with the public, as if we were enemies of the Moorish Science Temple of America, when actually we're supporting the divine warning by the prophet for the nations. But they only got away with it because the people didn't know or didn't read. But as the years have passed and you see that the people have become more conscious, and then as you can see, many of the hybrid Europeans have lost their estate. Now they're telling the truth, supporting exactly what Noble Duality said they would. And therefore, as you said earlier, confirming what we've been telling the people for years.
And so, I think it's important to not reject the information based on who it's coming from.
The truth is what it is.
The truth is truth.
Truth is what it is. What we always say to people and what we say, we give people certain points of reference so they can research for themselves. This is the deal. And as we've always said to the people, and this is for years with the detractors, the trolls, the COINTELPRO operatives, etc., and their powers that they have held over the people in their different letters, organizations, the different P's this and the I this and the NAA that and all these kind of organizations that the people thought was trying to help them. We always say to them, don't accept what we say. Do the real work, do some research and prove us to be liars. And if they do, they will become scholars in the process. And what you see, the fruits of that coming to fore. Many people who over the years who were absolute in opposition to the position of the reawakening Moors, etc., are now some of your strongest supporters. Why? Because they find out this is the problem of humanity at large. And many of their social, economic, and political problems are the root of this information actually being suppressed. And as you said the other day, Dr. Naila, and I heard you in one of your conversations the other day, truth was being attacked. If someone's sincere, they don't back down when the truth is being attacked. They stand for the truth stronger. And when you see them back up from it, all masks are off and they're starting to show who they really serve. And this is one of the interesting things about this Aquarian cycle and the energies of Saturn, Uranus, and Jupiter is that they're exposing people, all of us, for whatever we claim to be. That electrical charge from Uranus is causing everything to be shaken up, and proving and having to prove whatever the claim is. So whatever gods any of us have claimed to be, in whatever capacity we've claimed it, she, they to be, you're going to have to prove it, not because I said so, because divine nature is commanding it of all living things to prove your gods. Now that's the truth. And this is what we're going through. And this is again why all institutions, whether social, political, religious, scientific, or any other discipline is being challenged. And if you really pay attention to the operations of government at Midgard, everything is broke. Everything is broken, and humanity is quite uncomfortable right now because they have vested their lives around these institutions that they have blind faith in, and they're recognizing the collapse of everything and trying to figure out what's what. They don't need to. They need to start studying.
And they need to start listening to the things that have already been said.
Already been told.
That we weren't paying attention to, that when they said what they were going to do. Now they're doing what they said they were going to do, and people are all up in arms. I mean, like, I know certain things you can't say, but, in a codified way, they're dying to get the V, just to find out that when they do get it, they're going to be able to, with a mask on, go and visit their people. What's different?
And even the mask, look at this, even the mask.
Right. But even the mask has its own negative health effects, but you're told now, but you get it, you can put a mask on and go and see your family. But the implication is that if you haven't gotten the V, then you can't see your family.
So if
crap.
You don't accept the mark,
stop visiting your family because of this.
So that is coercion, isn't it?
Yes.
It's threat.
Or you can't
it's
fly
threat.
into here or come out of there, or people are so not using their divine intellect.
It's threat and coercion, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So they're saying. So again, and as you were saying, with a conversation that I overheard some when you were talking to some people, even today, and many other times, trying to aid what you can, where people even speak of their pedigree in third person.
Yeah.
Skirting around the truth, not translation, trying to find a reason not to confess their own, and thinking there's no consequence.
Well, the question today, and they might be on here, but the question, I'm not going to name them because I don't even know them. But the statement had to be something around like, aren't Moors have not Moors historically been targeted and harassed and all of that, and black people?
Now,
so I'm saying, well, you're using that as a basis whether or not to declare your nationality. Well, if it's historically been done to everybody, the only thing that you can do
is to counter
it by actually declaring who you are. I said, because when it hits the fan, you have no nation
now look
to
at this.
back you.
Now look at this, Dr. Naila. Isn't it back to the pressure? The pressure, because it's really pressure on humanity, or the charge on humanity that people have read, but is manifesting in these days. And that is looking at it from a social, political, economic position. The time has come that every man, every woman, and every child must confess their own and worship under their own vine and fig tree. And statements like that are really people feeling that pressure and trying to find an excuse not to confess their own, thinking that it's based on your opinion of them as opposed to law, divine law, that is the command upon all humanity. And back to the point, nationality is the order of the day. And nationality, or claiming of nationality, kills the straw, does not capture it, which will never be allowed, because the captivity of the corpse or the dead or the civiliter mortus is the foundation of the bloodline for the vampires or exploitation. Therefore, a vampire will never remove their fangs for you. The best thing you can do is start wearing turtleneck shirts.
Look, with silver infused
and
turtleneck.
Stop calling it passion marks and faking yourself, because it ain't. And those Rome ain't going to act right. That's just it. Rome must be dismantled. And the principles of fraud and fiat set forth on planet Midgard for the injury to humanity must be dismantled. There is no such thing as getting along with Romans. It must be dismantled. Like it or not, Now you understand the symbol or the symbolism of the anthropomorphic Jesus coming with the double-edged sword, or what is called adur. And that's truth.
Listen, Revelations 18:4. I'm gonna go a little Bible, because there's wisdom in the Bible.
Yes.
It says to him, I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people, that ye, what is it? We have to come out.
Mm-hmm. That means come out of their jurisdiction.
That you receive not of her plagues. And if that's not what we're dealing with now.
Absolutely. Meaning that let's look at this, Dr. Nylia. No one can deny it now. The corruption is so blatant, so obvious, that even the blind can see. So people will have eyes that can't see, or have ears and refuse to hear. They can do it all they want to and say, well, that's that Moorish stuff. Well, do what you want to do. Guess what? You ain't going to fool. You're not going to fool the divine. Don't argue with us. Argue with the divine, because It's in place now. So what you were told was coming is already here.
Come out.
So don't act like you don't see it, because you're not going to have the option to pretend anymore, because it has nothing to do with the prophets who have told you. It has everything to do with what you're experiencing today. And as soon as you start talking the truth, guess what they'll do? They'll start censoring you, shutting you down, demonetizing the speakers, demonetizing any issue or anyone that stands for truth. The truth, like Dr. Nyla said, is under attack. So what do you expect? What have you not been already told? Because you've been told. So now, intelligently, we must start doing what? Dealing with it and not ignoring it. You're not going to be allowed to ignore it anymore. All we're trying to do is help you in our reawakening. Truthfully, that's all.
We all have to do this together.
Exactly.
Because we are one. I don't like it or not. Even the ones that might be disagreeable, we still are one.
We got to help each other. We got to stop the BS. Stop the divisionism. Stop the schism.
Right, because you're not getting out of this without me. And I'm not getting out of this without you.
You got that right. You got that right. You got that right. Are there any other pertinent questions?
A lot of things about money. Money's not,
because we don't have the convenience of, because of the the limited time that we have. We don't have the convenience of answering all your questions. So what we try to do is answer those which are generalized, and those that generally help most of us who are listening, etc., or in this great missionary work and this battle of restoring some kind of legitimate civilization function on the planet, which is the responsibility of all of us. Keep that in mind. And for those of you who still don't get it, keep in mind the enforcement of the Constitution, and it's not limited to that document that you know as the Constitution for the United States, because that is derivative from Honesty Confederation, which is derivative from the Gnostic law of the ancient Sabians. And now that's the truth. So if you go back to the principles of your ancient mothers and fathers, you'll get a better view of that which constructs what is commonly dispensed around the planet, known as the common law. And you'll also have a comprehension why in jurisprudence, the common law is referred to that body of law coming down from your ancient mothers and fathers, which is superior to all legislated law and other forms of law, etc. So when you're talking constitution law, when you're talking the common law, when you're talking nature's law, you're talking the law of ancient Saba. Keep that in mind. And that is researchable for all of us. And so when you're looking at the ancient Sufi philosophies, you're looking at ancient Sabian law, and it is not dogma principles, for they are based in nature's law and divine law. So don't distinguish or don't confuse dogmatic perspective of religion with true Gnostic wisdom and philosophies, which is Lex, law, jurisprudence, and it is and does no injury. It does injury to no man.
Looking at symbology and so forth, I'm thinking in terms of, we've looked at Superman. There's a character, Lex Luthor.
Mm-hmm.
And since Lex Luthor is
Law.
an antagonist.
Yes, or the Antichrist or Antichrist.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I forget the name, but when you look at the so-called father of so-called Superman, anthropomorphic Superman, he's an eel.
Well, Superman himself is Kyle.
Mm-hmm, of course it is, an eel. They even tell, they'll use stories.
They say, Kyle, remember who you are.
Of course. Ka.
L, yeah. Ka and Ba.
Yeah, there
God.
You go. Yes. Then you look at the anthropomorphic Jesus says, all of ye are gods. As I am, all men shall be. What I've done, all men can do. And some of you will even do greater works than I have done. You understand the metaphysical and moral cosmos story behind it. The philosophy of ancient Saba. Because that's what it is. And it's researchable for anyone. And this, when you look at the evil priests over the years that created all the secularism in religion, from their motivational point of view, you'll understand why, for their selfish cause. And so you see them now having Muslims and Christians and Jews fighting each other. When if the people did study, they'll find it all has the same origin, and that they've actually been pitted against each other by design, by the wicked priesthood. The very people who they've been trusting for guidance is actually the demons, pulling them into the pit. Now, that's just the truth. Get over it and start taking responsibility. Let us study. Let us share. Let us help one another. Let us love one another. Let us do and feel and want for our brothers what we want for ourselves. Those are golden rules. And that's why they say the golden rules of Lex is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That is the fundamental golden rule of constitutional construction of Lex. Therefore, the law does injury to no man, to no one.
I'm looking at this to see if there are any more. Sean Jones asks, why is there such a big push for Asian rights?
It's part of the game of creating division and diversion. At another time, they will start talking about anti-Semitism. At another time, they'll talk about Black Lives Matter. All of this is a game to create diversion and division, and it's a ploy. Don't fall for it. Just do unto others as you'd have them do unto you, and you've defeated that whole platform of fraud that's being presented over and over again to create divisions and schisms among the human family. Excuse me.
I want to say that there are many of you I've been getting texts. I'm just going to do a little interjection, requesting the USB drive. Make sure, please, that if you're ordering via Cash App, as opposed to PayPal, which is better, that you send me a text as you're instructed with your address, because Cash App does not allow you to give a mailing address. So if you don't text me your address and you just say USB drive and Cash App, I don't know where to send it. I have 2 or 3 people that I haven't been able to send anything out yet to because they haven't sent me a text. I know they paid for it, but if I don't know where to send it and I can't respond on Cash App, so I'm just saying this is a PSA.
Yeah,
we want to get your drives out to you. As a matter of fact, when this last group is out, I actually have an update I will be adding that I'm excited about. I'm not going to say what it is, but I'm adding an update.
When you update in the future, can you give the appellations of the natural people who sent you without directions, so they'll be aware to fix that and to contact you? Absolutely. And hopefully, they will see it. But I want to get it out to them. But since sometimes they just send it on Cash App and they don't send me their mailing address and their appellation. Keep this in mind. So I'm telling you what I know. Dr. Nail, just before we started this session at the House of Reawakening Minds. She was sitting on a sofa, going to sleep. Dr. Naila works constantly. She's a writer, as most of you know.
I had to speak today.
And she does conversation lectures and support systems on many levels, more than some of you know about, and some of you don't. She and I'm also kind of stuck in that situation. Does so many things that she really doesn't have the time in the day, but she does what she can. And I always say to her, a lot of times she gets frustrated because she tries to. Some people say do too much, but people do who they are. That's who she is. And some people are so expansive in their mind that unconsciously they end up putting more things on their table of activities than the human body practically can manage. But she does it. So please, when you communicate with her, make sure that you have your appellation and the care of location for receiving mail specifically and clearly written so that she can communicate back to you when she's able to get to you as smoothly and as efficiently as possible. And a lot of times, and I understand a lot of times as people are reawakening or getting active, it's frustrating because we've been attacked from so many angles that people are expecting. It's not like we're here sitting at this venue all day. We have other things to do, a lot of other things to do. And much of this is not just work for the nation, but actually work for humanity at large. So and it's not an arrogant statement. Be thankful and grateful for the sacrifices that she's been making, and be considerate when you mail to her, and make everything clear, and the mailing locations too, etc., so that she can operate efficiently, because she's burdened down with a lot of work. And at the same time, we want to thank all of you who have been supporting the House of Reawakening Minds and official hours with Dr.
Office
G,
hours.
Official office hours with Dr. G, etc. And our main work really is sincerely trying to help in the great missionary work of uplifting fallen humanity. And logically, when you're seeking truth, you cannot paint yourself within a box. And so we deal with many subject matters, all directed to the missionary work of trying to help uplift fallen humanity, trying to help where we can, people getting out from under the Roman yoke and the miseries set forth on humanity by the hybrid Europeans who have been causing much din and destruction on the planet, and doing everything that they can to suppress the light or the ascendance of to the fifth dimension and other dimensions of the mind, of the chambers of the mind, under superliminal knowledge, etc., which is part of more science, which they've been holding back from you. So we share what we can and try to help where we can. So please be patient, take notes, study, pay attention, and help where you can. Make your criticisms constructive, knowing that our will is sincere to help the people, and contribute your part to the uplifting of fallen humanity, because it is the job of everyone. And as it has been said by many of the good philosophers over the centuries, freedom is everybody's job.
Absolutely. Thank you. I want to go back to some questions because we have about an hour left. Okay. In the land of Al-Moroccan Vision says, in the land of lies, your truth and facts are seen as criminal. People on mainstream media push the Black Lives Matter all day, but no one mentioning more.
Of course. Now look at this. Look at the political platform set up by Skull and Bones operative known as Soros. They set up Black Lives Matter as two things that happens. The people who think that black is an African identity, not knowing that it's actually nom de guerre designed to actually bury the truth of Moorish history in the bloodline. What can be researched through congressional journals, etc., and through fact of research is that the platform set forth by George Soros for Black Lives Matter has netted for their private corporation operations over, I think, somewhere in the area of between 32 and 36 billion dollars. None of it has gone to any so-called quote unquote black organizations. All of it has gone to, in fact, and provable, the political campaign of the Democratic Party for JB and other demo operators of the Ghoul Order of the Kykelos, etc., under the Grand Dragon, whose past form, and his name was the one who was JB, was one of his Ghoul members, and that is what's his name? I forget his name.
I knew you.
Yeah, but he was a senator.
And JB's wearing a mask. I don't know who's under it.
And so they're putting...
Look, we don't know who's under it, but it's definitely not...
But you already know all of the dynamics that's going on now is a diversion because the people are reawakening. And so the truth is being treated as an enemy. This is why they're doing so much to suppress information. And it matters not what platform, from whom it comes.
And they're pushing people like LL Cool J and others to have conversations on hip hop channels with Dr. F to convince, also black people that is safe. Also,
for those of you, as a side study, do the research on the non-disclosure agreement that was made or promoted towards so-called top rappers about 25 years ago to change the rap game so that they could fill the private prisons of the magistrates who are stockholders in the private POW camps known as U.S. prisons and targeted at all Aboriginal people, to fill the POW camps known as U.S. prison camps, etc.
And I just sent a text link out to several people to look at that video where the Albions were discussing it and telling us exactly what happened, when it was, and why it was. And they were told if they didn't sign the NDA, they wouldn't have a seat at the table for the change, which went from, and these were the top ones. So some of these top ones are now in movies and various things they've gotten were promoted for promoting gangster rap as a method to fill the pipeline and live,
youth
while they live behind gated communities and like other folks did normal, but they come out in persona to make our young people follow them, not them, but follow the pipeline into the private prison.
Now you know again why, for those of you who are lovers of music, now you know why and how politically under Unum Sanctum operations, how the beauty and the poetic and social uplifting construction of rap music had and has become corrupted. It was not accidental. It was by design. But this is, again, part of social engineering that people need to know about. So even as you can see, after they have used up the usefulness of many of the rap performers of these days, they actually sacrifice them, because the U.S. corporation operatives and members of the Roman Curia have bottomry instruments and insurance policies on all of them, and they collect. And so you see them killing off musical artists, writers, performers, singers, etc., and stealing their books, or what you would call their whole stock of music, etc. And what needs to be known is that all of the operators of the musical industry, just like the pharmaceutical industry, just like the congressional military industrial complex, actually, for the U.S. corporation company, Roman Curia members actually have on the straw constructs insurance policies on every living being that think and don't counter that they are U.S. citizens. And actually, when they murder people on the streets, whether it's by the members of the gangs of New York, known as the police fraternal order, etc., or by any other operations of the military complex or of the medical industry that suppresses and murders all holistic doctors, etc., that their missionary work is to suppress truth, to suppress knowledge, and as an organized attack against humanity at large. Therefore, this ongoing work of helping to uplift fallen humanity is everybody's job. Job. Keep it in mind.
Even found out recently that allegedly the Beatles were created by MI6.
Of course it was.
As an operation, and that's one of the reasons why JL may have died, because
one of the reasons
he wanted to expose.
Yes,
stuff.
In the
they
music.
Were being used
in the music
to create a frenzy.
Yes.
Both on this side of the pond and the other.
And distraction.
As were the hippie, if you read The Strange Happenings in Laurel Canyon, you'll find the craziest stuff that most of these so-called flower child groups of that back in the 60s.
They were put in place, actually.
Sons and daughters of
military operatives
that have been programmed.
Never suspected either of people.
You got to know what's going on.
Yes.
You got to realize that it's always been, you got to realize that the movie, what was it with, where he was, they were videotaping the guy the whole time. Oh gosh. The, Jim Carrey. Somebody put it in there.
Truman story.
The True Man story.
Yeah, True Man story.
We are living and have been living a true man story, and we've seen the camera now. We've seen the movie camera.
Soon as you start soon as you start seeking the truth, what do? They put up a wall. They censor. They go against the constitutional principle divinely of what? Freedom of speech. So they've been pretending to be your government when really they're the enemy. Pretending they are a farce. They are a prima facie. They are discolored, distinguished from that which is real. They are de facto and not de jure. It's a fact.
Let me see. It is interesting. Bay Tasjanase asked how, and this question came up the other day when Sister Sharon was on, how can someone nationalize inside the prison? And the problem is that most things are blocked.
They block.
They block that.
So, and this is what people need to know too, Dr. G, that the prisons are actually POW camps.
Absolutely.
And they should be called in international law what they are designated in international law. They are prison camps, and the people, which is why they're predominantly Asiatic, tagged or branded as Blacks and Latinos, predominantly, because the people are under occupation. Now, the cognizance of the pedigree in the bloodline is a birthright issue. It is not a political or religious issue. It is a pedigree issue of the bloodline of the people. Cognizance of it or knowing it is in itself the major part of nationalization, because you can't become what you already are.
That's right.
You are who your ancient mothers and fathers were and are, with no doubt, no contradiction. It is irrefutable. Therefore, reawaken to who you are. Man, know thyself. And that's for starters. And once you do, Stop calling yourself the brand systems that they set up to steal your birthright. In the process, from a political administrative position, even though they're blocking you, what it does, it kills the bond systems which are necessary for their economic operations, which means the bottomry instruments set up by the pseudo Congress of and for the U.S. corporation company disguised as legitimate government, which is the basis of their economic stock market trade, collapses when you act positively upon your knowledge of being more. That's why this information is being attacked from all angles. And that's the truth. See, the deal is like we said earlier. Rome will prompt, as the people are awakening and reawakening, Rome recognized that the danger of their rulership is people's consciousness of it. And when the people become conscious, they will put an apple out there for redemption or promise of redemption, like UCC redemption, holder in due course. Now, not that these principles aren't correct in their nature, but this is what they present: UCCs, UCC 3 and 9 financial statements, which is really a data collection, truthfully, disguised as redemption, and then use it against you. And so understand that these are dark priests that have actually been operating government. And so since you've been disarmed by intelligence, this is again where the General Education Board comes in that we talked about earlier with the Frederick T. Gates Foundation and Rockefeller Foundation. Therefore, understanding that the foundation of their operations is fiat or blind faith operations or breach of trust constructed operations by members of the Circle Church and Chancery. So every instrumentality that they will present to you will be colored. So if you approach any promise from Rome that they will return your right of estate to you, is only a trick for buying them time. My position has always been is rebut and reject Rome, and the bond will fall, and therefore all instrumentality constructed to the straw man and issued on the stock market by its very nature of operation in the rule of heirship, when the heirship becomes cognate by law that the estate must be restored to the heir from the hands of the fofer or trustee. And they breach that principle constantly. So for those of you who have even used the different commercial processes at cost, for cost, because remember, birthright is a divine right. It is not to be bought or sold. An unalienable or inalienable right cannot be converted or sold or transferred to another. Therefore, there must not be a monetary fee involved. Therefore, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and it kills the bond. And when you kill the bond, it kills their economic system. So if you shut off the blood supply, vampire, he's bad with his cape and all this stuff, but he can't play the super guy too long when he's lacking blood. Therefore, an exploiter, quote unquote, vampire needs your blood, and he needs your cooperation and consent. Stop consenting and watch the vampire die. That's what you do. Claim your nationality and kill the bond. Meanwhile, take the time to study and learn to reject all the other systems and platforms that Rome has constructed for the enslavement of humanity, and come to each and one another's aid sincerely. That's how you're going to defeat the demons, because that's the truth. Because you need each other. You really do.
So there was a question I'm trying to find. There was a comment or something about, and I'm using codes because I don't want to. So I want.
You have to, because the demons are on the platform.
I'm going to call it A and Chrome, and we know about that. They want to know, I guess, what you do you know about the achrome? But I can say for one thing, it's very interesting. My mind went back to a particular so-called movie star that over I think in the last year and a half or two, wife divorced him, and one of the things that was at issue was the amount of expensive wine he was buying. This expensive wine. This particular actor starred in
the Roman ritual of the
Pirates of the Caribbean. Mm-hmm. You'll know who it is, and looking quite youthful. But the wife, one of the things the wife cited was paying like $1,000.
No, it costs around $8,000
for bottles of wine.
A pint.
It was wine
and you'll see the priesthood doing this ritual too.
But it wasn't wine.
Of course, it's not.
And you see the ones that have been youthful.
It deals with child sacrifice.
Since Trump put started to
an executive order against
the executive order. Do you see how many of them have aged or disappeared altogether? Mm-hmm. Because they haven't had their $8,000 wine.
It's one of the reasons why I said, a year ago or more, about 2 years ago, when I started saying that I'm not defending, don't confuse me saying what I'm saying or what I've said with support of. Just look at this thing from a metaphysical point of view. When I said that Donald Trump is assigned, he is assigned. Pay attention.
Yeah.
And I said that years ago, and I'm saying it again. And I'm telling you why I said it.
Mm-hmm. So there are, I highly recommend Noble Mormon, that Weird Seeds Inside the Canyon, Laurel Canyon, Covert Ops in the Dark Heart of the Hippie Dream. That is a very, very eye-opening book. Currently also reading, Sister Cynthia turned me on, Martin L. to the Wilmington, the lie that happened in Wilmington, North Carolina.
Oh, yes.
And can you, I just got, because somebody called me about this, and I just got Peter Moon's Montauk Book of the Dead.
Yeah.
Because the person that told me about it was really, really just over the moon, no pun intended, about the fact that I guess Noble Drew Ali is mentioned in that.
Yeah, I talked to Peter Moon a few years back.
And the conspiratorial things that took place with other
the betrayed organizations, yes.
Yeah, so he got an album.
Which is available in the congressional records, actually. Yeah. Also in the, for those of you who are researchers, give you some reference, the history of American religions, you'll find some of the documented facts that Peter Moon also mentioned in reference to Noble Drew Ali, and you'll recognize other so-called black organizations that claim Islam were breakoffs under COINTELPRO operations to actually divert people from the Moorish Divine and National Movement by design to create schism. And it's a known fact. And it's also one of the uncomfortable pieces of information that was exposed to Il Malik, known to most as Malcolm X, when he made the Hajj by a French Muslim, etc. When, of course, according to instructions, Malcolm went over there talking black and white, and he was corrected about the truth of the schisms that were operating at the Maghreb, which is actually here, Morocco, the most extreme west. And he was put in a very uncomfortable position. And also that knowledge, among other things, and revelation of that knowledge made Malcolm become, by not from his fault, but just from being exposed to other knowledge, he became the target of character assassination and the conspired person of assassination by members of the gangs of New York and other persons claiming to be religious who were supposed to be his brothers in concert to remove his life, because they knew that he was eventually telling certain truths that made a lot of people uncomfortable. So it's more about Malcolm X that many of you all need to research. Truthfully, that's not told to many people in public.
And folk know, I mean, people know, a lot of people know we need to listen to. And I'm planning to have some more people on, guests rather, on Office Hours with Dr. G. They may be European, but they're speaking the truth. I was just in a conference the other day that who had Richard Smith and his wife Maria had, and thank you to my sister Cynthia Martin L. And there was a modern European daughter there, teach Michelle Gibson.
Oh yeah, Michelle Gibson.
Michelle Gibson,
a scholar and a researcher,
speaking the truth about us and doing it from a standpoint of not
historical
research, and the fact that when she found out what the truth was,
it is what it is.
It is what it is. It is what it is. So she's doing everything she can to expose the truth.
And keep in mind, as we go through this trauma, some will call it transition, some will call it apostasy, some will call it Armageddon. All means the same thing. Those who put themselves on the line to help with the uplifting of fallen humanity during this time of turmoil will be remembered. Keep that in mind. Those who have the courage to stand against the odds and tell the truth in this time of turmoil, where the dark priesthood and vampires are at the height of their power and are attacking anything that deals with the activation of the pineal gland, or with justice, or with that which is right, or anything that's de jure, or anything that is Moorish. Keep in mind, those who aid in the help of uplifting fallen humanity will be remembered.
Let me see if there's any more comments. Yeah. What nation does one such as self-Caucasian claim ancestry is Ukraine, or is that a different situation? I've been watching your work for years, so full of knowledge you give. Thank you. This is from Ukraine.
Now, still, if you look at Ukraine, you still look back to the daughters of Nefertiti. You're still looking at Saba. Once you really begin to look at the history and the walk of man, you'll find that we're one big family that fell into schism by the hands of the dark priests of the world. Now, that's the truth. Another thing that you can look at, like for the brothers and sisters from Ukraine, look at your traditional dress, your traditional, what they'll call them now, rather than call them traditional garb, they'll call them traditional costumes all over the world. Look at the constructs of your traditional dress, your traditions, your customs, and then look at the etymology of your linguistic forms, and it'll trace you back again to the ancient Sufi, i.e., the men with the hair like lamb's wool, i.e., Saba, Sabi. That's the truth. So it's sort of like we're suffering all over this planet from the hybrid Europeans claiming to be us, but who are not us, who have been practicing destroying the original culture of Asia, Africa, and separating humanity and hiding the truth of the walk of man, and therefore making people think that your contemporary names of the different nation states has separated you from the truth of African origin when the planet is Africa. So keep that in mind. So look at the customs, look at the dress, and then look at the ancient customs and dress of ancient Saba or Africa or the Gnostics, and you will see absolute and direct constructive conjoined similarity showing you the origin. So also look at the ancient Naga. There you go. It's traceable. It's just that there's been so much denial that people, so much effort to destroy Moorish history and culture, that people start thinking separate when we're not so separate as people have been thinking that we are.
Let me see if there's any. I'm actually ignoring and blocking trolls, but I was gonna laugh. Somebody said that neither one of us are Moors. They are so funny.
That's fine.
I'm so I think I want to laugh. I want to laugh. I don't know what that was, but
it doesn't matter.
You are blocked. Aha. Now you're blocked. How about that? Yeah. Let me see if there are any more comments. I have to learn how. Taj, do you know the name of the book by Lincoln where he called Dred Scott a Moor? You know the name of it was a book. It says, "Do you know the name of the book by Lincoln where he called Dred Scott a Moor?" Did he?
No, I have a couple of books on Lincoln.
Was it Dungy or was it Dred?
No, that would be because when Lincoln was a lawyer, he was defending against the slander of William Dungy being called a Negro and a black, because he's dealing with the pedigree from a law perspective, dealing with the slander laws of the United States, etc., which have always been in place, and that would be the William Dungy case
not the
of 1853 in 1852, 1853 era. That would be the William Dungy case when Abraham Lincoln was a lawyer. This was before he was president for the United States.
Was it a book or was it just a legal?
Do the research on legal documents registered in Cook County, Illinois, and you'll find some of the affidavits issued by Abraham Lincoln. And that would be more specifically the William Dungy case, although that was not the only case that was argued in a period of time. That was one of your primal cases. And the William Dungy case is a few years before the Dred Scott case. And keep in mind that the Dred Scott case is deemed as the most important slave case ever to be presented before the Supreme Court of the United States. And that was ruled in 1857. So the William Dungy case was before the Dred Scott case. And those are two important cases dealing with status and estate and those principles relative to citizenship, the capacities and the incapacities in relationship to citizenship. And for those of you, or, for the average brother and sister out there and people out there doing a little bit of research, just go to any standard quality dictionary and look up black or more, the compound word, and just do a general history on all the persons or people who are dark complexion or Asiatic Africans. And that'll give you just basic knowledge that all scholars know and any researcher knows. This is just basic stuff. Then if you're doing any research into Asiatic African history, philosophy, culture, 7 liberal arts, the fundamental rules of erudition and education that have been a standard across the world, including the oldest universities in the world, go look up Moorish history to study African history, and it takes you in and back to your ancient Canaanite, Moabite history and culture of Hikupta, Egypt, etc., universally for all African Asiatic people. And that's a fact. Don't take my word for it. Do your own research. And so when you have trolls or people who are trying to divert you, keep in mind these are people who have been benefiting from the civil liter mortuus operations that have been particularly executed at North America, Northwestern Mexico, and exported around the world, etc., to keep this knowledge in the dark. And generally, it is referred to, quote unquote, in secret society as the Great Seal, quote unquote, as Muhammad's Mountain, quote unquote, or the Great Masonic Secret. All of those are phrases that actually hide the true history, much of the true history and the disciplines of the walk of man. And it is not limited to what people refer to as some religious perspective. It is actually the science and the disciplines of humanity at Midgard in general.
Let's see. Foster Cameron Hunter said, what does Alkebulan mean? The same as Asia?
Yeah, Alkebulan is also referred to as Hikupta, or what you call Africa, and certain sections of Africa, or Hikupta, they refer to as Kemet. So when you think about it, from a common perspective in modern educational platforms, they will limit it to you of the modern contemporary name of Egypt, limited to a jurisdiction in North Africa on the east side of Asia Minor today. But in fact, in context of time, it included most of the landmass of the world, in truth, including the entire Western Hemisphere, which comprises Hikupta or Egypt, the capital dominion, in fact.
Let me just see. Hot Tot L. Taj, what do you think about speaking in tongues as it relates to Christianity and spirituality overall? Can you speak about that?
This is the position I take on that. If one is given a message from the spirit realm, it's usually for yourself. And anyone who receives spiritual communication, and if they have some comprehension, they should be able to etymologically interpret it and give reference to it. For all what you will call linguistic formats, even going back to Sanskrit of ancient Sudan and Nubia, etc., of ancient Hikupta, of the lower Egypt, etc., is certainly available, including the cuneiform constructs, etc. Therefore, if someone said they receive a message, they certainly should be able to interpret it. And if they can interpret the ancient linguistic forms, certainly they should know the basic etymological constructs of modern forms of language. And if they can't do the one, they certainly can't do the other.
Okay. Patar Right Knowledge said, is the word Africa, is it of hybrid origin?
Africa is not so much hybrid. It is actually coming, or Ifrika, it's Ifrika, from the ancient world of Berber linguistic groups. And even America, as you know, comes because ancient name for Africa is just simply more contemporary, is Amexem. And you have the prefix of Amexem and the suffix of Africa, which makes America. So when you do the etymological and linguistic grammatical study of linguistic form, America is Africa. Always was. But this is one of the traps in linguistics, which is also demonstrated again in this 8th grade test that we shared with you earlier of how they dumb down the people. And once you start doing some of even your basic discipline study, many of these questions that are asked, which are totally legitimate, you will answer them yourself. And this is where we're trying to do the best that we can with most people, get them back to fundamental disciplines and the actual arts, or in linguistic, grammatical, and scientific disciplines that is generally loosely referred to as more science, in order to fix a lot of these problems. Because keep in mind, one of the deliberated war or psychic attacks that it has been deliberately perpetrated against the people is connotative linguistics. And this is where the priesthood has deliberately corrupted linguistic formats to cause this confusion in the first place. Because actually, when you start doing etymological research, which is the true history, the true meaning, and the true origin of words, and do what you call cross-reference, you will start recognizing actually the customs and the culture, which is the lex or the jurisprudence, and find the commonality of humanity on earth, and not what you call the towers of Babel or the corruption on earth for the corruption of the linguistic form. And that's the truth.
Terrence Lyles asks, with many of the leadership of the Black Panther Party being educated in the degree system, why were they not preaching Moorish heritage and nationality?
Keep in mind, if you do, this is a good answer for this. Do the research on COINTEL operations at North America via the FBI and the CIA, and particularly those operations headed under the Skull and Bones operative known as J. Edgar Hoover. And you'll recognize that all organizations of Aboriginal people, and specifically Moors, etc., who were tagged as Black, have been infiltrated deliberately, and that those distinctions, including dealing with educators, were distinctly instructed not to support or expose Moorish history. Those were direct orders. You will find that in all in all of the information exposed for those who are researchers, with the infiltration into the Moorish Divine National Movement, and particularly under the Moorish Science Temple of America. We're talking documents, and all of the so-called Negro and so-called Black organizations were infiltrated, and particularly with most of the leadership that has been compromised, for them to promote the Black nom de guerre in order to divert the energies and the positive actions, particularly dealing with hereditament, etc., in relationship to the Aboriginal people of the planet. And this has much to do with, again, with the bottomry instruments that are the support basis for the bond system on the stock market. That's why, again, there's when people are looking at the social economic problems of our targeted community, it never dawns on them that the instrumentality of the stock market is actually founded upon their backs. And the bonds are not a chain. The bonds are the bottomry instruments. And so all organizations that seek to restore legitimate self-government operations are, by organized operation, attacked and infiltrated. That is much and has much to do with the motivations as to why many of these people that you may consider who present themselves as helping our people will pretend that Black is African identity, when the word Black is not a negative. Keep this in mind, it's not negative. It creates a status platform of non-descendability, corporal and incorporeal, that supports birthright theft. But Black, in fact, actually comes from Middle English 1500s, derived from Old High German, and actually means pale colors. That's exactly what the word Black means. It means pale colors. For those who doubt it, go to any etymological dictionary, any basic grammar dictionary, grammar-supported dictionary, or etymology on the English language, and you will see for yourself that the word Black does not mean African people. It means pale colors. And you know what pale means? It does not mean noir. Does not mean ebony.
Amin Bey says, question. So if everything we come into direct contact with poses a danger of spreading a dangerous, contagious, and deadly disease, then why has handling fiat not been an issue of concern?
Because you already know that the foundation is a fraud. It's self-evident. You know, they attack people's common sense because common sense applies to common law. So people are groomed to even deny common sense because the answer becomes obvious. It's obvious that this is a farce being heaped upon humanity. And it's both a psychological attack and a biological attack, as demonstrated and as presented in the King Alfred Rex 84 Executive Order 11490, Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. That too is documented. And keep in mind, all your so-called leaders, Black leaders, most of whom are Masons and Eastern Stars, get this knowledge anyway. But they take oaths not to reveal the secrets. Why? Because it would help humanity. Don't they happen to get these kind of comfortable ambassador and corporate jobs? Interesting, isn't it? Oh, and contracts in the musical industry. Mm-hmm.
Kirkendall Bay says, what time period or battle does the term April Fools derive from? I know about the burning of the boat. I
That's
just
where it
can't
comes
find
from.
the other information tied to the event.
So look at, do a little research on the fall of the Red House, which is ritually practiced in a Masonic ritual. So the Red House is the Alhambra, which is referred to in these days as one of the seven wonders of the world, which is remnants of the great Moorish rulership in Granada, Al Andalusia, before it was referred to as Spain, after the marriage of Ferdinand and Isabella and the defeat of the Moors. And they call that the Columbus discovery era of 1492. So look at Columbus not as a man, but as an era of political activity. And so look at the operations of the Moorish chieftain Boabdil and the relinquishing of jurisdiction of Granada so that the Romans would not burn the city or burn it down. And he abdicated or surrendered the Alhambra. Now, so the Romans promised to let the women and the children go and not murder them, which has been the tradition of Roman operations, etc., hybrid Roman operations. And so they supplied ships for them, and they put women and children on the ships, and then they burned the ships, and that was April 2nd. They call it April Fool's Day. That's where its origin is.
So, Day L. Reversioner asks about...
in reference to that, to the fall of the Red House, too. One of the celebrations that takes place at the Maghreb in Shakamaksim, although for those operations or the fall of the Red House is the Mummers Parade that's exercised and assembled at 6 and Moore Street at Shakamaksim or Philadelphia, and it's called the Mummers Parade, January the 1st, 1492. And so they call it the new year of the dark priesthood of the Roman tribes, etc., over the Moors, i.e. the Mummers Parade celebration in what they called blackface, assembled at 6 and Moore Streets, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Going westward, then you're dealing with Horace Greeley of the Whiggamore Party, back to the Kansas-Nebraska Act, turning 90 degrees square at Broad Street, marching North Gate, and stopping at the dark north area of the parapet at City Hall, which was a battleground in Philadelphia, with the cornerstone in a grave pit just inside the dark north towers of the parapet of City Hall, designed just like a mosque and facing the Masonic Lodge, where George Washington closed the lodge at Broad Street, etc., at Philadelphia. January the 1st of every year, not in harmony with nature, but when in harmony with the keeping of the fall of the Red House. And so they say, 1492, Columbus discovered America. It is a metaphor for the defeat of the Moors. That's what it is. So Columbus is not a real man in the sense that the people think it is. It's talking about an era of Inquisition operations and the success of the hybrid Germanic tribes taking over the order of Islam, etc., at the Maghreb, at the North Gate. And therefore, in Masonry, the hybrid Europeans through the Masonic order are referred to as, quote unquote, the keepers of the North Gate. And so you will see they'll have a statue of George Washington and his friend Lafayette as a statue standing in front of the Great Masonic Hall at Broad Street off Jupiter, where City Hall is the place of determination of the Mummers Parade. And when they do tours there, the first place they will take you to is the Oriental Room or the Moorish Room, which are a duplication of ancient Moorish and Ionic architecture duplicated of the old temples of the Moors, etc., within the tour operations at that lodge. That's a fact. So for you all to see some of the architecture that tells you the story, go ahead and go on a tour to the Masonic Lodge at Shakamoxon or Philadelphia at the Masonic Order, and you'll see the parapet where they have Billy Penn, who landed in Chester area, and now we're going back to Winona and Tammany, and he's standing facing the lodge, etc. As soon as you look up to that parapet, and then you'll see where they close ritually the ending, or they end the parade of Mum. Mum means Mum is the word, etc. Mockery of the Moors. And from a motivation, a political motivation, you will see why many people who have been living off the birthright and the estate of the Moors, as soon as you bring this information up, the trolls will come out like roaches after you spray the insecticide in the corners of the house.
Excuse me. DJL Reversion asked about whether or not common law liens are effective to remedy violation and enforce under the treaties.
Can I make that clear? Say it again.
Common law liens, whether they are effective to remedy violations, I guess, and enforce under the treaties. I'm not sure what else the South will say.
It's got to be.
It's not clear.
It's not no. But anyway, the enforcement of common law simply means, in its nature, when you study jurisprudence, it actually means enforcing constitutional law or positive jurisprudence. Also, it relates to res judicata and stare decisis, which means irrefutable law.
Maymon Jack asked if you could talk about Lincoln being hung.
Oh yeah, yes. That's another part of history that they don't tell people.
So it's one shot.
Lincoln was hung.
And there was another question up here whether or not he was a Moor also sometime together.
Let's put it this way. When many of you have the flash drive, you will see on the Dungy case, when we give reference to the William Dungy case that Lincoln demonstrated, we also took a caption from satire cartoons of the 1800s that was commonly distributed around the country and around the world in the 1800s. And you'll find Abraham Lincoln dressed in Moorish garb with a scimitar.
Can I throw that picture up there? Because
yes, do that.
His life mask doesn't look
his
like
life
he
mask,
was shot in the head.
And also you can show the satirical picture that we have on the Dungy case in the on the flash drive, both of them.
I'm putting up
the life mask,
Lincoln's life mask. So, but where was he allegedly shot? Like in the chest or something?
In the back of the head at Ford Theater.
Well, this life mask doesn't look like a person who had head trauma.
Well, you already know the history is misrepresented to the people. Now, again, and this is fundamental information that many adepts know, but don't talk about too. And as we go along, as a matter of fact, as we go along in these lessons from the House of Reawakening Minds, and in the, I think, lesson book number 3, Chief Justice Ben Bey, Mu Ali, we kind of mentioned that. years ago. That's another lesson book that hasn't been published. Well, we'll share some of that with you with that. And also, there's another good brother and researcher who exposed a lot of that added information to help the people. That's Lord Anton Maddox Eel.
I think he's on. He was on. I think he's on the.
Yes.
He was on in the feed in the chat.
Yeah, Lord Anton Maddox Eel does a lot of research and exposes a lot of that added information that's suppressed by a lot of people, both Asiatics and hybrids. Again, as these people begin to learn, they're going to learn that they have been lied to about our Moroccan history on multiple fronts. You also have the unfortunate situation where the hybrid Europeans, by hiding Moorish history and suppressing us, has actually been credited wrongly with some of the servitude slave history to themselves that really doesn't apply to them. And so
they were probably subjects of the slavery.
This is a lot of the dynamics of the truth of history has to be corrected to bring peace. And so in the future, a lot of this information will be also shared with you and reference points for study.
We have to do our conference. It's going to come up. But we're running to getting at the end of time. And so what I wanted to do is share, since I have this opportunity, to share with you, the viewers and listeners, that we are currently, it started today is almost over, and what's known as 3 days of darkness.
Mm-hmm.
It may coincide with the alleged death and burial of Yeshua the Christ. However, what I wanted to share with you is, I'm involved in energy healing and clearing and so forth. And we had a powerful meeting last night where those of us who use like the AO scan were instructed to Friday and Saturday to clear our homes with our energy devices. Well, a lot of you don't have the device. You've seen me run up, the scan about this thing about scanning, but you have sage or something that you can.
Old Egyptian technology.
Right, sage. If you can go to every room in your house and closets, corners, sage. This is a period for the next today, tomorrow. Sage and cleanse your environment, cleanse the closets, cleanse everything. If you can open the window.
Think of your ancient mothers and fathers while doing it.
Right. Winnow out if you have feathers to winnow out, the negative energy, and you're bringing in and saging for the positive energy. And then on Sunday, and I know this might sound a little bizarre or wild, but we were instructed.
Also, with the ancient, for those of you who have it, frankincense and myrrh.
Right.
The real good stuff.
Right. So we've been instructed to create a, I'm going to call it like a shampoo made out of aloe and frankincense and myrrh and I know an egg. And if you are vegan and don't want to do an egg, you might want to use like I don't know, like a bean, like what is the stuff that they use, those white beans? Something that was an egg substitute. And you need to maybe text me so I don't know what I did with the piece of paper, but we're putting together a shampoo that you cleanse.
Oh yeah,
it was called head cleansing, and the brother that was sharing it with us, his father and his grandfather used to do this at this period of time every year. They wash the head, and they
in the all around the world, because it's related to basic spring or the four gates of the earth's wobble behind the sun, which creates your seasons, and what we would call springtime or the new year, according to the area. So we keep in mind the view from Midgard to the heavens, the constellations energies would be different, just like you look at the longitude and latitude on the earth. And so you have the different new years around the earth.
Yeah, chickpea.
It would be harmonic. Yeah, chickpeas. They're harmonic with the operations of nature. And so Africans would always do what you would call cleansing. All the rituals of ancient Africa, keep in mind, are designed for protections. and it's based on a study of natures. And when people are not aware of the culture and traditions, they often look at it as something weird. It's only because they don't recognize or they have not been taught the origins and the cosmological purposes. So when you do the research, a lot of the rituals don't look like mysteries or foolishness. They actually, you begin to recognize their relationship to nature and the mind and memories of man, and the reminders of principles of your harmonic relationship to nature and your keeping of the Sabbath, or your keeping of Sabi. Truthfully, that's what it is: traditions and customs.
Well, what I wanted to say is I don't want it to, of course, we always, first of all, I want to appreciate those of you who supported Sharon
Yes.
with your donations for the Tuesday night show. I know she greatly appreciated everything that came in. I did what I said I was going to do.
Mm-hmm.
We also, we just want to make sure too.
Yeah, we want to thank you all for supporting the House of Reawakening Minds, and many of you people, brothers and sisters, and supporters who have been supporting us with your presence and with your donations. Many of you we can't get to personally, but we want you all to know that we appreciate your support, and it helps get this work done. So continue, we trust, to support the House of Reawakening Minds, and keep in mind that the House of Reawakening Minds and the official office hours with Dr. G are in place to help the people, help us, help you, help us all together. So thank you very much, and know that all of your supports are appreciated sincerely. And thank you all, and have a grand evening.
Again, like I said, thank you for your support. And can we just, because we're in this time of cleansing, I want to take a moment. If we could just, we got 3 minutes. We're gonna
3 minutes.
We're gonna meditate out, if you don't mind, Gracie.
Yes.
And isn't that a beautiful aunt that I was able to?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Gracie, grab those pieces, these 1950s pieces.
Oh,
that I just. Thank you so much. That I was just able to procure from the 50s. I just want to share this, and we're gonna go out with some. This with some tones.
These are brass statues on pure marble bases.
Put it down some. Down. There you go. And I was able to. And these are from the 50s. Lift up some. Yeah. These are awesome that I was able, and I'm so happy that they actually have our features
Yes.
like they're supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
Let us go out with our tones.